My earliest memories are painted with the warmth of my father's radiant smile, the kind that could light up even the gloomiest of days, and the cozy comfort of our small, rented apartment. My name is Carla, and until I was 13, my life was beautifully ordinary, filled with simple joys that felt like treasures in their own right. My dad, James, was the kind of father who could transform the mundane into something magical. Though we lived in a modest apartment with plain walls and creaky floors, he turned our tiny balcony into a whimsical fairy garden, bursting with colorful flowers and twinkling lights. On rainy weekends, he'd convert our living room into an epic fort made of blankets and pillows, where we'd share stories and laughter. My mom, Sarah, was different, more reserved, always dreaming of a bigger house, a grander life, something more than what we had. Back then, their differences seemed to balance each other perfectly, like two sides of a coin, creating a harmony I took for granted. "Carla, sweetie, would you like to spend the weekend at Grandpa's?" Mom would often ask, her voice soft but distant. I'd jump at the chance, not because I didn't love being home, but because Grandpa Richard's house was like a second home, a magical escape. His beautiful two-story Victorian, with its creaking wooden floors and endless nooks to explore, felt like a portal to another world. "Your mother needs her alone time with your father," Grandpa would say with a knowing smile as I arrived at his doorstep, my small suitcase in hand. And besides, I need my time with my favorite granddaughter. I was a perceptive child, more observant than the adults around me realized. I understood that Mom sometimes needed space, that she and Dad had their own relationship to nurture. It didn't hurt me. If anything, it made me feel mature, like I was in on a grown-up secret. Plus, those weekends with Grandpa were precious beyond words. He'd share stories about Dad's childhood, tales of tree-climbing adventures and mischievous pranks. As a retired bank manager, he'd also teach me about managing money, breaking down complex ideas into lessons I could grasp. And let's not forget his pancakes, golden, fluffy stacks drizzled with maple syrup, the best in the world. One morning, as we sat on his porch, the scent of fresh coffee and warm pancakes filling the air, Grandpa looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, Carla," he said, his voice warm but serious, "your mother dreams of a house like this one, grand and spacious. But let me tell you something, what's more important than a big house is a home filled with love." I nodded, understanding even at that young age. Our little apartment might have been small, with its peeling paint and cramped corners, but it was bursting with love. Dad would come home from his job at the insurance company, sweep me into his arms, and spin me around until I giggled uncontrollably. He'd pepper Mom with kisses until she laughed, her reserved demeanor melting away despite herself. Those moments made our tiny space feel infinite, like it held the whole world within its walls. But life has a way of changing when you least expect it, like a storm rolling in on a clear day. I was 13 when Dad started losing weight rapidly, his once strong frame shrinking before my eyes. At first, he joked about it, flashing that familiar grin. "Finally getting in shape, Carla," he'd say, ruffling my hair. But his eyes told a different story, shadowed with worry he tried to hide. The doctor's visits became more frequent, and Mom's face grew increasingly strained, her smiles replaced by furrowed brows. "It's just a phase," Dad would insist weakly, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "I'll be back to my old self in no time." But he wasn't. The diagnosis came like a thunderclap, aggressive pancreatic cancer. It consumed him like a wildfire, relentless and unforgiving. Within months, my strong, vibrant father, who once carried me on his shoulders, became a frail shadow of himself. I watched helplessly as Mom tried to hold everything together, her strength crumbling under the weight of fear and grief. The last conversation I had with Dad is etched in my memory, every word carved into my heart. He lay in his hospital bed, his hand barely strong enough to hold mine, his voice a faint whisper. "Take care of your mom for me, Princess," he said, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "And let Grandpa guide you. He's wiser than all of us combined." The year after Dad's death felt like living in a fog, a haze of sorrow that wouldn't lift. Mom spiraled into a deep depression, her eyes often vacant, her voice hollow. She could barely look at me. I think I reminded her too much of him, a living echo of the man she'd lost. Thank goodness for Grandpa Richard. He became my rock, my safe harbor in the storm that our lives had become. Living in his house wasn't just a temporary solution anymore, it became my new normal. Every morning, I'd wake up in what used to be Dad's old room, surrounded by his childhood photos, his baseball trophies, and the faint scent of his old cologne lingering in the air. Grandpa made sure I kept up with school, patiently helping me with homework and trying his best to fill the void left by both my parents, one taken by death, the other lost to grief. Mom would call occasionally, but her voice always felt distant, detached, like she was speaking from another world. Her visits were even rarer, brief stops where she'd barely meet my eyes before rushing off again. I learned to stop expecting more, to stop hoping for the mother I used to know. Then, exactly 1 year and 2 months after Dad's death, everything changed. Mom showed up at Grandpa's door one sunny Saturday morning, and I almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the grieving widow in black, replaced by someone vibrant, wearing a bright yellow dress and sporting a fresh haircut. Her face glowed with a happiness I hadn't seen in years. "Carla, sweetie, pack your things. You're coming home," she announced, bouncing on her heels like an excited teenager. I glanced at Grandpa confused. He seemed just as surprised, his brow furrowed with concern. The drive back to our apartment was filled with Mom's cheerful chatter about the weather, new recipes, anything and everything. It was like sitting next to a stranger who just happened to look like my mother. But the real shock came when we walked through our apartment door. There, in our small living room, stood a tall man with a kind but awkward smile and a girl about 3 years younger than me, her expression equally uneasy. "Carla," Mom said, practically dancing to their side, "meet Robert and his daughter, Emma. Robert is my fiancé, and Emma will be your new sister. We're getting married soon." The room started spinning. "What? When did this happen?" I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. Mom waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, we've been dating for a while now. I didn't tell anyone about our relationship. You know how people can get jealous and judgmental. It was better this way." I stumbled to my old room, barely registering that it had been redecorated with new curtains and an unfamiliar bedspread. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and called Grandpa. He answered on the first ring. "Mom has a fiancé," I whispered, my voice shaking. "She's getting married and didn't tell anyone. There's a man here and his daughter." Grandpa arrived within 20 minutes, his face a mix of concern and disbelief. I could hear their conversation from my room as he confronted her. "Sarah, how could you do this without telling anyone? Without telling your own daughter?" "Dad, I'm happy for the first time in forever," Mom replied, her voice defensive. "I've decided to start fresh, to live again. James would want that. He wouldn't want me to waste away in depression forever." There was a long pause before Grandpa spoke again, his voice heavy with resignation. "I hope you'll be happy, Sarah. Just don't forget you have a daughter who needs you too." The 3 months before the wedding were like living in a twisted alternate reality. Our small apartment felt even more cramped with 4 people instead of 2, the air thick with unspoken tension. But that wasn't the worst part. What really got to me was watching Emma, my soon-to-be stepsister, wrap my mother around her finger. "Mom, can you help me with my hair?" Emma would say in a syrupy voice, and my mother would drop everything, even our rare conversations, to assist her. The way she called her mom made my skin crawl, especially since she'd only known my mother for a few months. Mom seemed blind to everything except Emma. When Emma mentioned she loved ballet, Mom immediately signed her up for private lessons, something I'd begged for years ago, but was told we couldn't afford. When Emma complained about her old phone being too slow, Mom bought her the latest iPhone model. When Emma wanted to redecorate her side of the bedroom we now shared, Mom took her shopping and spent hundreds of dollars on new bedding, curtains, and decorations. "Your sister needs to feel welcome here," Mom would say whenever I tried to point out the disparity in treatment. "Stepsister," I'd correct her, my voice tight with frustration. "And I need to feel welcome too." She'd just shake her head and walk away, as if I were the one being unreasonable. The wedding day was a modest affair at a local venue, but Mom glowed with a happiness I hadn't seen since Dad was alive. I stood there in my bridesmaid dress, feeling like a stranger in my own life, watching as she fussed over Emma's hair and makeup, barely sparing me a glance. Throughout the ceremony and reception, Mom kept Emma close, holding her hand, introducing her to everyone as my beautiful daughter. I might as well have been invisible, a ghost lingering at the edges of their perfect new family. Grandpa gave them a check for $5,000 as a wedding gift, a generous amount by any standard, but I overheard Mom's reaction when she cornered him by the restrooms. "Really, Dad?" "A check," she hissed, her face flushed with champagne and anger. "I was counting on you giving us your house. We're a proper family now. We need the space. That apartment is too small for 4 people. Grandpa remained calm, though I could see the disappointment in his eyes. "Sarah, you're rushing everything, first the sudden engagement, now this. That house isn't just property to be handed over on a whim. Besides, it's where Carla spends half her time now." "Oh, so that's it? You're playing favorites now." Mom snapped. "No, I'm being practical. And maybe you should be too," Grandpa replied evenly. I slipped away before they could notice me, but the conversation haunted me. My mother had changed so much that I barely recognized her anymore. She'd created this new, perfect family in her mind, with Emma as the star child and Robert as the ideal husband. There didn't seem to be any room left for me. So I did what any unwanted person would do. I spent more and more time at Grandpa's house. At least there, I didn't have to pretend to be happy about being replaced. Years passed, and I was about to graduate from high school. Living in that apartment had become a masterclass in avoiding conflict. I'd learned to be quiet, to take up as little space as possible, to spend most of my time either in my room or at Grandpa's. One evening, during our weekly family dinner, another exercise in pretending we were one big, happy family, I decided to share my plans for the future. "I've been accepted to State University," I announced, trying to keep my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "I want to study finance and business management." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom put down her fork, exchanged a look with Robert, and cleared her throat. "Actually, Carla, I think it would be better if you started working after graduation. College isn't necessary for everyone." I stared at her, bewildered. "What are you talking about?" "Dad set up a college fund for me before he died. He always wanted me to get a higher education." Mom shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "About that fund. Robert and I have been talking, and we think it would be better to save that money for Emma's education. She's incredibly talented, top of her class and everything. She'll need a good university education to reach her full potential." Robert nodded sagely. "Emma has shown remarkable aptitude in her studies. It would be the right thing to do, Carla. You could work for a few years, save up, and then go to college if you still want to." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The college fund, the last gift my father had arranged for me, they wanted to take that too. "That money is mine," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "Dad left it specifically for my education. You can't just give it to Emma." "Don't be selfish, Carla," Mom said, her eyes filling with tears. "Emma is your sister. Stepsister." I stood up so quickly my chair fell backward. "And that money is the last thing I have from Dad. You've given her everything else, my room, your attention, your love, but you can't have this. I won't let you take it. How dare you?" Mom was crying now, but I could see the manipulation in her tears. "After everything we've done for you. Emma needs." "What about what I need?" I interrupted, my voice breaking. "What about what Dad wanted for me?" The argument ended with door slamming and tears, mostly Mom's, as she wailed about my selfishness. After that night, the apartment became even more hostile. No one spoke to me unless absolutely necessary. Emma would smirk whenever she passed me in the hallway, and Robert wouldn't even look in my direction. When graduation day came, I wasn't surprised to find only Grandpa in the audience. He cheered loud enough for 4 people when they called my name, his proud smile meaning more to me than anything my new family could have offered. That evening, I packed everything I owned into 3 cardboard boxes and an old suitcase. Grandpa helped me load them into his car. Your room is always ready for you, sweetheart, he said as we drove away from the apartment. Always has been, always will be. I didn't look back as we left. There was nothing there for me anymore. College life became my escape, a chance to start fresh. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make my father and grandpa proud. The business and finance courses fascinated me, igniting a passion I didn't know I had. I found myself excelling in ways that would have made Dad smile, his old advice echoing in my mind. Every evening, I'd call Grandpa to share what I'd learned. Tell me again about derivatives, he'd say, even though he knew more about finance than my professors. I love hearing you explain it. But as my college years progressed, I noticed changes in Grandpa's voice during our calls. He got tired more easily, his usual sharp wit sometimes dulled. During my visits home, I caught him wincing when he stood up or rubbing his chest when he thought I wasn't looking. It's just age catching up with me, he'd say whenever I asked about his health, brushing it off with a smile. Nothing to worry about, sweetheart. But I did worry. I started calling him twice a day instead of once and drove home every weekend I could, not just on holidays. We'd sit in his kitchen, drinking tea and talking about everything and nothing, just like we used to. Sometimes, I'd catch him looking at me with such intense love that it made my throat tight, as if he knew something I didn't. It was the middle of my final semester when Mom called. I almost didn't answer. It was the first time she'd called in 4 years, but something made me pick up. Grandpa died last night, she said, her voice flat and emotionless. The funeral is on Thursday at 2 p.m. at Hartford Funeral Home. The phone slipped from my hand. I don't remember much of what happened next, just that my roommate found me curled up on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Thursday came too quickly and not quickly enough. The funeral home was exactly the kind of place Grandpa would have chosen, understated but elegant, with large windows letting in natural light. I arrived early, my black dress feeling too tight, my skin too sensitive, everything wrong because Grandpa wasn't there to make it right. I expected to see Mom and her family, but they weren't there. Instead, Mr. Harrison, Grandpa's friend from his banking days, was organizing everything. They're running a bit late, he said when I asked. Your mother called to say they'd be delayed. The service was beautiful, filled with people from Grandpa's life sharing stories about his kindness, his integrity, his humor. I sat in the front row, alone with my grief, until halfway through the service when I heard the back door open. Mom swept in with Robert and Emma, all in perfectly coordinated black outfits. They took seats in the far back and Mom didn't even glance in my direction. Her face was set in a mask of appropriate grief, but her eyes were already darting around the room, assessing, calculating. I turned back to face the front, my tears now burning with both grief and anger. Even here, even now, she couldn't acknowledge me, couldn't put aside her pettiness for one day to mourn her own father. After the funeral service, I drove to Grandpa's house, my home for the past 4 years, only to stop short at the sight that greeted me. Scattered across the front lawn, like worthless debris, were garbage bags filled with my belongings, my clothes, my books, my photo albums. Everything from my room had been unceremoniously thrown out, some bags split open, spilling my life across the grass. With trembling hands, I tried my key in the front door. It wouldn't turn, the lock had been changed. I was still standing there, key uselessly in hand, when the door swung open. Mom stood in the doorway, wearing the same black dress from the funeral, but now with an expression of triumph rather than grief. Oh, good. You're here to collect your things, she said, as if she was doing me a favor. This is my house now. Dad's finally gone, and as his only child, I'm the rightful heir. I've already had the locks changed. We're moving in tonight. I stared at her, unable to process the cruelty of it all. You couldn't even wait until after the funeral? These are my things, my home. No, this is my home now, she cut me off sharply. And you better take your stuff quickly, or it's going in the dumpster. I need to clear the space for Emma's things. She smiled coldly. She's getting your old room, by the way. She's always wanted a bigger bedroom. I felt numb as I gathered my belongings, stuffing everything back into the torn bags, trying to collect the scattered photos of Dad and Grandpa from where they'd fallen in the grass. My mother stood in the doorway the entire time, watching me like a security guard, making sure I didn't try to steal anything. The drive back to my college dorm was a blur of tears and disbelief. My roommate helped me carry everything up, not asking questions when she saw my state. A week later, I received a call from a law firm. "Miss Johnson, this is Mr. Anderson from Anderson and Partners Law Firm. I'm your grandfather's notary. We need you to come in for the reading of his will. Would Thursday at 10 a.m. work for you?" I agreed, though I couldn't see the point. Mom had made it clear she was the heir to everything. When I arrived at the notary's office that Thursday, Mom, Robert, and Emma were already there, seated like royalty in the leather chairs. Emma was examining her manicure, Robert was scrolling through his phone, and Mom's eyes narrowed when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" she asked loudly enough for everyone in the office to hear. "You're clearly not needed for this. We're handling family business." Mr. Anderson adjusted his glasses and began reading from the document in front of him. "I, Richard James Mitchell, being of sound mind and body, declare this to be my last will and testament." He started with the formal language, but I saw Mom already smiling triumphantly. That smile froze when Mr. Anderson continued, "To my beloved granddaughter, Carla Johnson, I leave my house at 1542 Oak Street, along with all its contents and my entire savings account containing $475,000. The room went deadly silent for a moment, then Mom's voice shattered it. "What? This can't be right." She snatched the document from Mr. Anderson's hands, her eyes scanning frantically. "Where's my part? I'm his daughter." Mr. Anderson calmly retrieved the will. "Mrs. Waters, your father's wishes are quite clear. He leaves everything to Miss Carla Johnson. There is no provision for you in the will. This is impossible." Mom's face had turned scarlet. She manipulated him. She poisoned him against me. "I'll sue. I'll contest this will." "The will is ironclad," Mr. Anderson stated firmly. "Your father had it properly witnessed and notarized 6 months ago. He was of completely sound mind, as attested by his doctor. Any attempt to contest it would be futile and expensive." Mom's strategy suddenly shifted. The rage in her eyes transformed into tears as she turned to me. "Carla, sweetie, please," she pleaded, her voice honey-sweet now. "We've already given up our apartment. We moved everything out yesterday. We have nowhere to go. You can't just throw us out on the street. We're family." I stood up, holding the folder Mr. Anderson had just handed me. Inside were the deed to the house, ownership transfer documents, and all the legal paperwork confirming my ownership of the property. "Family?" I asked quietly. "Like how you threw my belongings onto the lawn before Grandpa was even in his grave. Like how you tried to steal my college fund. Like how you've treated me for the past 4 years. That was different? This is your problem, not mine." I turned to leave. "I suggest you start looking for a new apartment." I drove straight to Grandpa's house, my house now. I pulled out my phone and called a locksmith, explaining the situation. When he arrived, I showed him my freshly notarized ownership documents. "I'm the legal owner of this house," I explained, showing him the paperwork. "I need you to open these locks and then change them to new ones. I want to be the only one with the keys." As the locksmith worked, I gathered everything that belonged to Mom, Robert, and Emma, all the clothes they'd already unpacked, their toiletries from the bathrooms, Emma's posters she'd already stuck to my old bedroom wall. I loaded it all into garbage bags, just as they'd done with my things. When the locksmith finished and handed me the new keys, I dragged all their bags onto the front porch and arranged them neatly. The symmetry of the situation wasn't lost on me. Their belongings now sat where mine had been just days ago. Polaris. As the sun began to set, I heard the familiar sound of Mom's car pulling into the driveway. I watched through the living room window, Grandpa's favorite spot to read his morning paper, as their reactions played out exactly as I'd expected. "What is this?" Mom's shriek could be heard clearly through the closed windows. "Our things. All our things are outside." I opened the door but stood firmly in the doorway as they approached. Mom's face was red with fury, Robert looked like he'd swallowed something sour, and Emma was already crying theatrical tears. "How dare you?" Mom stormed up the porch steps. We live here now. You can't do this to us. Actually, I can, I replied coolly. This is my house now, legally and rightfully. You need to take your belongings and leave. We have nowhere to go. Emma wailed. You should have thought about that before giving up your apartment, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Not my problem. Mom tried to push past me into the house, but I stood my ground. Move, Carla. This is ridiculous. This is my father's house. No, it's my house now. And if you don't leave immediately with your things, I'm calling the police to report you for trespassing. After that, all these bags go straight to the dumpster. I pulled out my phone. Your choice, Mom. Just like you gave me a choice about my things a few days ago. Remember? The next few minutes were filled with cursing and threats as they gathered their bags. Mom alternated between crying and screaming about how unfair it all was, while Emma kept saying I'd regret this. Robert muttered under his breath about contesting the will. As they loaded the last bag into their car, Mom turned to me one final time. You're no daughter of mine. Your father would be ashamed of you. I smiled sadly. No, Mom. Dad would be proud that I finally stood up for myself. Goodbye. I watched them drive away, their car disappearing around the corner. That was 6 months ago. I'm in my final semester now, about to graduate with honors. The house is being rented to a lovely young family, their monthly rent payments helping me build my savings, just as Grandpa would have wanted. I found his letter in the study safe that first night after everyone left. My dearest Carla, it began, if you're reading this, it means you've already dealt with your mother's reaction to my will. I'm sorry I had to put you through that, but I knew Sarah too well. I knew what she would try to do. You have your father's integrity and my business sense. Use them both wisely. The house is yours to do with as you please. Just promise me you'll keep the family photos in the attic. Some memories are worth keeping, even the painful ones. I kept that promise, along with the others I made to both him and Dad. I'm focusing on my future now, letting go of the past, but keeping the lessons it taught me. Sometimes, family isn't who you're born to. Sometimes, it's who believes in you, who protects you, who helps you grow. Mom, Robert, and Emma still live somewhere in the city. I hear they found a new apartment eventually. They've tried to contact me a few times, usually when they need something, but I don't respond. Some chapters of our lives are better left closed. Please feel free to comment below if you liked this. Remember to like and subscribers for more.